I'm almost ready to start making the final adjustments and add the shadows. But before I do that, I want to replace this heart with the clock. And I have this as a smart object, the model. And I can take advantage of that because now I can edit this. I can eliminate this heart using the original size of the model, because remember that I made this a bit smaller. You can see that it's actually at just 55% of the original size. And if I double click on the model layer, it will open that PSB file, because this is a smart object. It will open it on a new document. And now I can go ahead and remove this. And I used layer mask, so just create a new layer mask and get the brush tool. And you can use a hard brush. You can leave the hardness at 100% and just mask this part. You don't have to mask it entirely, just the edges, because this part will be covered by our clock. So we just need to take care of the edges. I want to reduce the spacing of the brush for more precision and reduce the size a bit. When you get to this bottom part, you'll have to use the clone stamp, because the clock is rounded, so it will probably go around here, like so, and you'll have this bottom part visible, which is not what you need. So what you can do is create a new layer. Remember that we are still working on the PSB file. It's this layer. Once we close it, it will update this layer, because that's a smart object. And I'll get the clone stamp tool, sorry, and I'll use a smaller brush. And I have this new layer. Check sample all layers or current and below. Let's leave it on all layers. Opacity and flow of the brush at 100%. And I'll sample from here and just paint again. I just want to extend this this area here, this white area. So I'm using a small brush, because it's not really easy to work with a big brush in this area. I also want to make sure that I don't have pen pressure checked. And in order to make this transition here, what you can do is lower the opacity of the clone stamp and just sample from here and make a smooth transition. Right now it doesn't seem like a nice job here, but we are at 200% zoom, so once you zoom out, you'll see it a bit better. Okay, so just make sure you cover the area. Let's leave it like that, and we'll see. Well, actually, let's hide all this part now that we have the layer mask there, but with the brush tool, not with the clone stamp. Okay, and now I have this ready. I can close this tab, and it asks me if I want to save it, and I'll choose yes. And now you can see that it updated this layer, and I can see something here. I don't know what this is. Apparently I used the brush tool on the X layer. Let's delete that. Okay, so now we have this layer updated. I can see a small part here which I didn't mask, and instead of opening this, I will use another layer mask for this smart object and simply mask that part. Okay, we still have this color here around fingers. We'll have to fix that, but let's add the clock, and we will, once we have everything in place, we will deal with that. So let's press Ctrl Command O to open our stock folder, and this is the image that we will use. And I used this clock. You can use any of them if you want, but I don't know, I used this one, I liked it. And a really easy way of extracting this is using the elliptical marquee tool and put the cursor right here in the middle and press and hold the Alt and the Shift key. The Shift key will constrain the proportions. You can see it makes it round rather than like that. And with the Alt key, what you do is instead of expanding the selection from the point where you clicked, towards the direction where you're dragging, it will expand the selection from the center. So that's what these two keys do. I'll make the selection a bit bigger than the edges of the clock, and I'll click on the layer mask icon, and that will hide everything, and I'll get the brush tool and I'll refine this. You can see this dark area here from that frame there. Okay, so now we have it. I'll select everything. I'll select this part and go to Edit, Copy, Merged. When you have a layer mask like this, if you just go to Edit, Copy, you will copy the image without the layer mask. So it's like not having the layer mask. That's why you have to copy the merged layer. So let's go back to our canvas here, and I'll place this clock above my model layer, pressing Control Command V. And let's place it here. You can see it's bigger. Well, actually we have to put it under this model layer because we don't want to hide the fingers. Let's see how it looks. It doesn't look bad, but well, no, we have to leave it on top, because if we leave it behind, it will go behind the neck, and we don't want that. I'll show you a way to mask that. But let's change the name of this to clock. And I want to turn it into a smart object. And I'll decrease a bit the opacity so I can see the fingers through it. And pressing the Alt and the Shift key will do the same as we did with the selection. It will expand or contract the object, will make it smaller from the center, and it will keep the proportions at the same time because we pressed the Shift key. Okay, let's make it about this big. I want this finger to touch the edge, and I want this other finger, the middle finger, to touch that part there. And let's leave it here. Anyways, we can retouch this once we have it. That's why I turned it into a smart object, so I can fix it. But it looks pretty nice to me, like that. And what I will do in order to show the fingers, because we need to make it look like the fingers are on top of this frame here. So what I will do is press and hold the Control key and click on this thumbnail of the model layer, and you can see that loads the selection. And all we need to do now is create, well, first I'll create the layer mask for the clock and then repeat the process. So press Control and click on the thumbnail once you created the layer mask for the clock. And now I just got the brush tool and paint with black, because what I'm doing is hiding the clock. Okay, I'm working on the clock layer. So with the brush tool, just carefully paint this area here, like that. And let's do the same here. Let's paint all this area, and now paint with white back. Well, actually these fingers have to be behind, so let's leave that how it was and just have that finger. Okay, so that's how I masked, that's how I made the clock there. Okay, it's probably a bit too much to the right. I would like to have it a bit. Let me move it just a bit so I can. Oh, anyways, I'll leave it like that. Doesn't bother me too much. Okay, so one other thing we need to do is fix the color around the fingers. So in order to do that, I'll create a new layer above the model. Let's name it Finger Colors. Clip it to the model layer. This is just for it will make it easier for me to to color that without caring about the edges. And what I will do is get the brush tool and sample a color from the fingers and change the blend mode of this finger colors layer to, let's try color. Let's see if that works. And just paint like that. Probably choose a more orange tone. And let's use a soft brush. I'll delete that and do it again. Like that. And let's take a look at 100%, and it looks a bit better, but I'll probably decrease the opacity just a bit to see how it looks. To about 70%, so you can see the before and after right here on the fingers. Okay, the next thing I want to do is, well, we're done with this, but let's, before we start with the shadows, let's add those silhouettes here on the clock. It's really easy to do that. Just create a new layer on top of the clock layer. You can clip it if you want to. Let me clip it just so it visually it's easier to find it on the palette, but it's not really necessary because we're not close to the edges. So I'll name this cover clock, and you can simply use the brush tool. Make sure you use a hard brush and press the Alt key to sample the color from the clock itself. You have to zoom in a lot because you have to be really careful with those edges, and just paint over the numbers here. Like that. Sample again. This tutorial is a bit more extensive than I usually do, but well, I hope all of you can follow it. And you can always just pause the video and watch it later if it's too long. Okay, so let's keep masking this. I'll speed up the video here because now you've seen how I did it, so it's just a matter of covering all of these numbers here. Okay, now all of those numbers are gone. So what I did next is I added those silhouettes here, and that's one of the concepts that I really liked of this artwork. I use clocks on a lot of my artworks, and I don't know, I just wanted to sort of like represent a cycle here. That's why I added those silhouettes here. So let's go ahead and do that. You can find a lot of silhouette vectors on the internet. I don't know if I have them all here. Well, there's a few of them. I think I used more than the ones that are here. So what I will do is go back to my original artwork and just show you what I did. Okay, so these are the silhouettes that I added. I added one every 2 hours, so to say. So at 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6, 8 and 11 and 10, sorry. And I'll copy this same silhouettes from here. Just let me see if I can find them. I think I have them on a group. Okay, so this is the silhouettes group. I'll see if I can drag it to my canvas right here. Okay, I'll make it smaller. These are smart, these are custom shapes, so I can resize them without losing too much quality. So I'll leave that one there, move this other one here, so just adjust the position. I'll give you links to some of the silhouettes that I can find on the internet, but you can search your own, it's not difficult. Apparently I have an empty layer here. Let's delete it. And if you want to make it look just a bit more realistic, you can drop the opacity. Well, actually it kept the opacity of the original one. I just dropped the opacity just a bit so I can see some of that yellow through that black. So let's leave it at 80%. Okay, so that's how I added those silhouettes there. You can leave the clock, the hours there if you want to, but I thought it was a nice concept there, and that's why I added it. Okay, let's now that we added that thing there, let's add the text here. You can type wherever you want. I'll type just I don't know, my name. So I'll create a new layer and get the type tool and use, let's try normal font. Let's try a font that everyone has and type my name here. Okay, and in order to make it more realistic, you can, more realistic, you can make it a bit, you can destroy it just a bit. So I created a layer mask for it, and that's the same thing that I did here. You can see the text, it's a bit more dirty, so you can do that. Let's close this image. So you can do that if you create a layer mask and use the brush tool and choose one of these brushes here. They can help you get a more destroyed look on your text, and just stroke the edges like so, and just change the brush every now and then, because you don't want to have repeating patterns. Okay, so let's do the same here. So just on the edges like that. Don't brush like that, simply just click once and affect that edge just a bit. Especially on straight edges, because it will look better. And let's try this one as well. Okay, so well, this text is a bit bigger. On text that is a bit smaller, it looks better. Okay, so the before and after looks a bit more realistic, I think. Okay, so everything's done now. All we need to do is start making adjustments and shadows and the light effects, and we're done. So let's start with the adjustments. I'll start with the model layer. So I'll start adding adjustments on top of the finger colors layer, and I'll start with the curves adjustment, and I'll have to clip it because I only want to affect the boy. So press and hold the Alt key and click on this between these two layers, or just once you create the adjustment, right click on it and choose create clipping mask. And the reason why I added this is because I want to have more light on the shadow, and also the shirt is a bit too dark. So I'll add like a couple of points there and just add a bit more light on the shadow part, a bit lower, and get something like that. Okay, see the before and after. Then I added a hue saturation adjustment, also clipped to the model layer. Let me expand a bit the layers palette so you can see it better. Okay, and I decreased the saturation to about 22 or 20%, just to take away some of the color on the jeans especially. And then I wanted to have just a bit more light on the shadows, and that special effect that the exclusion mode gives. So what I did is I created a solid color, also clipped. So all these layers are clipped to the model layer. Let me choose a color, a really dark color like this. It's almost black, and I'll clip it to the model and change the blend mode of this to exclusion. Okay, so you can see the effect that you create. It kind of softens the image. I don't know what exactly it does, but I really like it. And if you want more effect, you can use a brighter color, but as I said, we need really dark color tones. So click OK. And then if you want to control the contrast, you can use levels also clipped to the model and just increase a bit the highlights. Something like that. I don't want to touch the midtone, so I'll leave it to 1. And let's leave this to about 230. Okay, so that's what I did with the levels. So these are all the layers that are related to the model. We have the finger colors and then all these adjustments. We have 4 adjustment layers: curves, hue, saturation, color fill, and levels. And if we deactivate all of them, you can see how it was, the original. Then we added all these adjustments and we brightened it up just a bit. What I will do to save space on the layers palette is I will select all the layers related to the model and I'll group them pressing Ctrl Command G, and I'll name this model. Okay, so let's move on and work on the road sign. And what I will do, since they are all the same, since both of them have the same colors and everything, I will group all of them, all those layers, and let's name this road sign. And I'll add the adjustment layers to this to the group, to the whole group. In Photoshop 6 you can do this. If you have a previous version of Photoshop, you can add these adjustments on individual layers, but I can do it on the group, so I will do that. And what I did is I used the hue saturation adjustment. So I'll clip it to the group and let's reduce the opacity and the saturation, sorry, to about -50 or so, -60. And then you can see it darkened it, so I want to use levels to bring up the brightness just a bit to about there, and maybe a bit the midtones, not too much. The problem with that is that you can see this pole here is now too bright, so what I will do is go to the pole layer and let's see, maybe on the color overlay I'll use a darker color just to bring down that brightness a bit. Okay, so we have that sign there. Let's deal with this axe now. I'll create a hue saturation again for this, clipped to the layer, reduce the opacity to about -50. And a problem that I saw here, it is this highlight here along this edge, and this is how I fixed it. I used layer styles. I used inner shadow. So I unchecked use global light, and I changed the angle to 0 because I want that shadow to cover that part there. Okay, I wanted to cover this highlight with the shadow, so about that big, and I increased the size because I wanted to have a softer effect, something like that. And now let's choose a color similar to this, so a brown like that but a bit darker. Well, actually you can choose a similar color to that and leave it to multiply. On the original I used, let's see, because I have it right, I wrote down, I had it on hard light. Let's see how it looks. But I used a much darker tone. Well, it looks the same. It looks nice anyway. So use a dark tone and choose hard light if you want to. And you can see how that highlight goes away. Well, we also affect a bit the bottom part here, but it's not visible, so I don't really care about that. If you want, you can use an even darker tone just to simulate the shadow casted by the boy's leg, so you can use a dark color like that. Don't saturate it too much because you want to match the color of this handle here. And then I also use the color overlay to the entire axe using a dark brown color again. like that, and choose the blend mode color. This time a bit more saturated, and decrease the opacity slightly, just to give it a tone, but I think it's not necessary because it looks nice. I will not add the color overlay. On the original I did, but I will not add it here. Well, let's go now to the suitcases, and we'll have some problems here with these highlights. They are too strong. So the first thing I want to do is decrease the opacity because they're too saturated compared to the rest of the image. So create a hue saturation adjustment as clipping mask, so create it above the suitcases and then clip it to the layer. And I'll reduce the opacity, let's say, to about -35, -40, something like that. And the next thing we want to do is get rid of these highlights, they're too strong. So I'll create a new layer, again clipped it, and let's name it highlights killer, because we want to kill those highlights. Oh, I forgot the R. Now I'll change the blend mode of this layer to linear burn. And let's see what color we need to use. I'll sample from the suitcase itself, a color like that, and use a soft brush. That's too strong. But anyways, let's paint with this color, and then we will use the hue saturation adjustment. Okay, so now you can see that color is really strong and is not good at all, but it lowers those highlights, which is good. But now we have to match this color to the rest of the object. So I'll press Ctrl Command U to load the hue saturation, and I'll start with the lightness. I want to increase the lightness just to see what we can get, and maybe desaturate it a bit. Okay, so now it looks a lot better. Let me show the before and after. So with the lightness, that color was too dark, that's why it looked like that. So I increased the lightness and I desaturated because it looked too saturated to my taste. Oh, you can see how now it looks a bit better. And now I'll click OK, and I'll get the eraser tool because I want to get rid of this edge here. I don't need this, so I'll use a soft eraser just to get rid of that edge there, and right here as well. Okay, so let me show the before and after. Before and after. I think it looks a bit better now. Okay, so let's keep going and move on to the tree. I'll select the tree layer, and again I'll desaturate it. So I'll clip a hue saturation to the tree. I guess I could use a hue saturation to the overall image, but I want to control the saturation of each object independently, and also remember that we already desaturated the background, so that probably would desaturate it even more if we use the global hue saturation over the entire image. Okay, so I decreased the saturation of the tree, but you can see it makes it darker, so I'll add levels. I don't remember on the original artwork the adjustments that I used for the tree, but these are the adjustments that I use now, so you can do the same. Okay, something like that. And maybe desaturate it a bit more. Okay, so these are the adjustments that I have for the tree. So let me change the name of this to tree. Okay, so we are pretty much done. Well, we still have the clock. So let's do that. What we need to do is desaturate the clock again. So if you don't want to use adjustment layers for objects like this, you can use layer styles. You can use color overlay. Get a gray color, any tone of gray, doesn't really matter, and change the blend mode to color, and that will turn it into black and white, and just reduce the opacity until you have the right amount of saturation. Okay, I'll leave it to about 55 before and after. You can see now it's a bit more unsaturated. Okay, so we're done. Let's move on and make the shadows. Again, we need to go on each object separately, and I'll start with the model. Okay, so I'll create, remember that I placed it inside a group, so what I will do is select the model and press and hold the control key and click this new layer icon, and that will create a layer below the layer that I have selected, and I'll name this model shadow and zoom in at 100%. And let's get the brush tool, reset our colors to black and white. We need the black color to be our foreground color. And let's set the opacity to about 50 and the flow as well. I always do the same when I work with shadows. And I'll leave about 20% hardness on the brush. And I'll start making my contact shadows, clicking here and here. Notice that I paint with just with the edge of the brush, so I just paint right here on the edge. You can see this edge here. Instead of painting like that, I place the brush on the inside of the object and only leave one side of the brush. That way I create that what I call contact shadow. I don't know how the name of that kind of shadows. These are just some soft shadows where the object touches the ground, in this case that TV and the boys' sneakers here. Takes a bit of practice until you get to make this kind of shadows, but they really add realism to your artworks. So see, I don't have to make too many shadows here, just right there on the edge a bit, and right here. And we'll have to make the soft shadows now, so what I will do is increase the brush size just a bit, reduce the hardness to 0, and reduce the opacity to about 25 or something like that, or 30. And the reason why I make the brush bigger is because now it's softer, and I can paint with the same technique, only with the edge of the brush, but since the brush is bigger, it works a bit different, and you get a softer shadow. And I want to cast the shadow sort of on the left side, you know, like that. Oh, okay. I don't like that shadow there. So just to make a few shadows around there. You can make this on separate layers if you want, if you're not confident. So make the contact shadows on a layer, and then this soft shadows on a different layer. But I have some experience, so I think I can do it on a single layer without making too many mistakes. Let's do the same for this X here. I think it's worth spending some time making these shadows because it really gives realism to your artworks. And since we have everything here, I think I'll make all the shadows, all these painted shadows on the same layer. So I'll probably change the name of that layer. Well, I'll have to drag it even lower under the suitcases right there, because now I can paint the shadows of the suitcases on the same layer. And I'm using this soft brush. Okay. That's too strong. Okay, so we have those shadows there. Let's do the same for the tree. Let's see if I can paint the shadows for the tree as well, but I need a lower opacity. I just need a really soft shadow, not very visible for the tree. Okay, like that. And let's do the same for this pole here. So in order to create a straight line, do the same that we did here when I masked that fence there. So use a bit of a harder brush, about 25%, and the diameter, use the same diameter as the pole here, more or less the same diameter for the brush. And now just click here once, and then somewhere here, and that's how you created that shadow. That's how you can create that shadow, but I'll use a smaller radius, about 55, and maybe a bigger, a harder brush, and I'll do it again. And I'll lower the flow because I want to make a second pass. Okay, so that's how I created that shadow. See the shadows that I have already. Okay, but now we need to make more shadows for details like the fingers here, the bird, and the signs. So we'll have to make these on separate layers. Let's start with the road sign. So let's locate that group. Okay, here it is. And what I will do is locate that pole and create a new layer clipped to the pole on top of the metal texture, and I'll name it shadows. And the reason why I clipped it is because now if I get the brush tool, I can paint on it without worrying about those edges. That's why I clip it. And I'll create the shadow right here under the sign. I'll make the opacity just a bit higher, and the flow as well, and just paint a really soft shadow like that. Let's do the same here. The top shadow is not really that realistic. I'll probably use the eraser to get rid of that. Okay, and now for the shadow of the bird on the bottom sign, I'll create a new layer and clip it to the bottom sign. So as I said, you need to know how to work with clipping masks, and the better you organize yourself on the layers palette, the easier it is for you, but it's not really complicated. Just creating new layers and clipping them to other layers, which help you to work easier. So let's name this bird shadow. You can also load the selection and not clip the layer mask, but it's easier for me to just clip it. And let's make a soft shadow right here under the bird. It's too soft, I don't really like it. Let me delete it and try again with the harder brush. Like that. Now I think it looks a bit better. And now we need to make the shadow for the clock right here for the fingers. So let's find the group for the clock right here. And I'll create a new layer on top of it and clip it. You can see it's on top of this layer that we used to cover those numbers. And let's name it finger shadows. Okay, and get the brush tool again, use that low opacity and flow, and just make some shadows where the fingers touch the clock, right there, like so. This will give a bit more depth. Okay, something like that. And I think it looks a bit better now. Okay, so I think we're done with the shadows. Well, we still need two more shadows. The shadow of the X reflected here on the TV. So I'll select the model layer because the TV is part of the model layer. I hope this is not too confusing, but so I'll create a new layer on top of all these adjustments, and well, let's I'll clip it. I usually clip it, but you don't have to clip it if you don't want to. Just make sure you don't. I do this for safety because I don't want to care too much about the edges, so I can paint without caring about the edges. I'll name this X shadow, and again I'll use the soft brush and just click here once and click here again. But so press the shift key, click here once, press and hold that shift key, and that will click again on the bottom, and that will create a straight line connecting the 2 points where you clicked. It's not a straight shadow, is not really realistic, so let's make it on 2. Okay, make it a bit rounder, and probably decrease the opacity just a bit, like so. And you can also soften it a bit if you think it's too hard. And we also need the shadow of the suitcases, and for that, select the suitcases layer, create a new layer above, clip it to the suitcases. Oops. Let's drag it on top of the highlight scaler and name it Suitcases Shadow. This is the shadow that the TV casts, because you can see it's close to the TV. So I think I can use the gradient tool. So select the gradient, select black to transparent. Okay, and use the linear type, and let's see what we can get from this. Let's reverse it and try again. I don't really like it because it also affects the top. I'll use the brush tool, a soft brush, and just paint some shadows like that with really low opacity. Using low opacities and flow will allow you to control better the amount of effect that you add. I'll go for a second at the general shadows because I want to add a bit more shadows right here on the bottom. Okay, something like that. Okay, maybe some shadows right here under the fence, using a smaller brush. So now we're ready to move on and make the general adjustments. Okay, so we are ready to make the final adjustments. But before you do that, you can also use the dodge and burn tool to enhance a bit the highlights, and there's folds here on the boy's jeans, so will make it look a bit better. But let's skip that and move to the final adjustments, because these are more important. And what I did is, first I wanted to create a glow of light there, so I created a new layer. Let's name it glow, and change the blend mode of this to screen, and use a dark brown color, something like that. Let's see if that works, and use a big soft brush, flow and opacity to 100%, hardness to 0, and let's see. Well, that looks nice, but I want a bigger brush, something like that. Okay, it adds a bit of I don't know, a touch of fantasy light to that, more cinematic, I think. I like how it looks. And next I use the gradient map for some color toning, and I don't remember the color that I used, but I think I used some orange tones. I'll check the original in a second. More towards the red, something like that. Let me take a look at the original and see what, yeah, something like that. You can see the colors that I used. Okay, so I used a similar color to these ones, and I changed the blend mode to screen. You can see the image becomes really bright, so decrease the opacity to about 10 or 15, and maybe use something closer to the red tones. Oh, that's too red, too much red. Something like that, and maybe a bit this one closer to the yellow. Let's lower it to 12, so you can see it brightens up the whole image. It's even too bright for my taste. Let's leave it at 10. And the next thing that I did is I added color balance. I really like to add color balance on my final adjustments, just to add a bit more cyan. You can see how it makes the image a bit colder, maybe a bit of blue on the midtones, and let's see on the shadows, maybe Add a bit more cyan as well. A bit more of green, not too much. You have to make really small changes with the color balance because it's really easy to just ruin the whole image. And to the highlights I'll add more yellow and maybe more green, but not too much. Let's see, a bit of magenta. And let's try preserve luminosity. It depends on how you make the changes, if you want to make it brighter or not. I'll leave it unchecked and show the before and after. Not too much of a change. Let me go back to the shadows and add a bit more cyan and a bit more blue actually to the shadows. Now you'll see a bigger change, okay? And well, you can also use curves actually and work on the channels themselves just to make a sort of a split tone adjustment on the shadows and add a bit more. Well, let's not touch the greens and go to the reds and get something like that, and you can see a bigger change. But well, I'll leave it here and decrease the opacity just a bit. And well, we're ready to add the light effects. And what I did is I selected the top layer. So select the topmost layer on your layers palettes. We're almost done, by the way. Press Shift, Control, Alt, and E to create a stamp. And let's name this Final. And right click on it and create a smart object, because I want to convert this into a smart object, because now we'll add filters. And the first filter that I add is one of my favorite filters. It's the lighting effects filter. So I'll go to the render filter, render, choose lighting effects. Okay, so what I will do, I have two lights here, so I'll delete the point light. I should have deleted the point light. Let's make this a spotlight, and I'll zoom out a bit because I want to make it bigger. Like that. I want the light to come slightly from an angle, like so. Have the center here because that's where I added that glow of light. And just make the hotspot a bit bigger. And colorize it, not too much. I'll actually not colorize it at all. So leave the color and the colorize option set to white. Let's see. I want this the metallic option set to 0. I don't want to mess with the contrast. And the exposure, I'll leave it to... I'll decrease the intensity and increase the exposure a bit. Something like that. Okay, the exposure now is too high. So let's reduce the gloss. I'm worried about these highlights here because they're too bright. Let's click OK and we'll see. That's why I use the smart object, because I can edit the filter at any time. Okay, so this is the effect that I got. A bit of a vignetting effect on the corners and a bit more light here. And as a final detail, I used a topaz filter, which is details 2. So choose detail 2. If you don't have it, doesn't matter. It's just a filter that I use to just give the final effects. I like how it looks. And let's try a preset from here. I usually use interior strong detail and then just adjust it, reduce the amount of detail. This filter usually what it does, it's just like the sharpen filter, so it boosts the detail on the image. Okay, I want to decrease the saturation a bit and decrease the boost and increase the saturation, and maybe increase a bit the small details. Oh, that's too much detail. Okay, something like that, and let's click OK and see what we got. Okay, so this is the effect that we get. You can also use, if you don't have this topaz filter, you can go to filter gallery and choose these paint towels. It will sharpen the image, but I think it's better than the unsharp mask. You can try that. And also for this kind of sort of HDR effect, you can also use the shadows and highlights, and you can get some really nice results as well. So this was a pretty long tutorial. I apologize if it was too long, but there was a lot of details to cover. So I hope you enjoyed it. Remember that if any of these stock images are not available, just search for something else. This is just an idea. I just wanted to show you some techniques, and I just wanted to show you how I made this artwork. So thank you for watching, and also thank you for following my tutorials, and see you next time.